Vanakkam, Namaste, and blessings to everyone. This is Dr. Bairavee Balasubramaniam PhD, the Sky Priestess. My apologies for the video quality. My phone is full as I've downloaded too many things that I want to watch on Netflix. So the dinky laptop that I have that is falling apart at the hinges has this to offer in terms of camera quality. Now, today I want to talk to you about something very important to me and to the type of work that I do. And I understand that it's not for everyone, but then again, I'm not for everyone either. So it kind of goes without saying. Today, I want to talk to you about how important it is to use your voice to change the world. And having been doing this for a while, especially in Facebook land and social media land, I've learned to see over the years where I've had a learning curve in seeing just how I could use my voice, when, where, how, and why. And to be honest, the issue about my voice, I would say, is most triggering, and here it comes, to privileged, entitled, white woman spiritualists. I can say almost without exception, these are the only group of people of that particular demographic that keep having issues with me. I'm not saying everyone has to like me. In fact, I say the opposite. Even when people want to come to me for sessions, I make them read a document that says why what I do is not for everyone. I would rather have less people following me rather than more, especially if in those masses there were people who were frankly disrespectful, racist, and just nasty. Now, you might wonder why this is coming up now. As an astrologer, I can tell you there have been numerous alignments ever since the Gemini full moon hit a few days ago that have brought out this shadow of grasping, nasty, toxic entitlement. Now, for those of you who want that astro detail, I'll be honest with you, given the amount of energy that this platform generates and requires, I need even more downtime than before, and which is why I don't do as much sessions as before. It takes a lot of energy. If you want the Astro Intel in advance, please consider joining the Tier 23 program because I will not be able to give things to you all of the time. What I do, I can do, and I choose to, and that's about it. But long story short, we have had multiple alignments that have really challenged people's developmental process, and it has actually made them come out of the woodworks. I'll give you a couple of examples, not because, I'm wanting you to rally to my defense or tell me how, sad you feel for what has happened. Solidarity is always appreciated, but that's not why I'm giving you these examples. I'm giving you the kinds of triggered patterns and behaviors that have come my way recently. I share a piece of, or a post that is about a cat. And as a cat mommy, I'm not going to do anything that's going to harm a cat. And it's a simple post, and people are laughing at it, they're enjoying it. But one woman goes, "Take it down, this is torturous to animals, blah, blah, blah." And I go, and of course, it's not an insensitive, it's not it's not a bad subject. In fact, it's a very important subject. But it's very, very clear that nothing about this is torturing an animal. And I go, well, no, this is a piece of art. And the person who did this is the cat's mom, and the cat is safe, and the cat is actually quite happy. And so then she goes on about how I'm not sensitive enough. And the thing that pissed me off there I was pissed off, was how she was an animal empath, but all I was just someone who owned a cat. I can tell you that the best way to piss any parent off is to question the level of devotion they have to their child. It doesn't matter if it's a human child or a fur baby. That was a stupid ass thing to say. But she also went on to say how she was on the path of the truly transcendent. And I was just like, this is my space. If you don't like this piece of art, you can move on. It's that simple. And she made a big song and dance about leaving and then deleted her comment and then left. But this was so disrespectful. I mean, when someone's already gone, yes, we've done the due diligence, everybody's fine, everybody's safe, it's a piece of art, the cat is happy. And someone insists my view is more important than yours in your space. That's entitlement there. One example, the stupidest thing was making that comment. I mean, seriously. Cat mothers out there, feel free to feel enraged with me. The second example that came up was someone who, when I was speaking on how and I post a lot more on Facebook because really text takes a lot. Um, I mean, if I'm just doing text, it's easy. If I'm just doing video, it's easy. But both takes a lot of time. And I was just writing about how I'm really not here to emotionally cater to people. That wasn't what I signed up for. I'm not here to hold anyone's hand. I will help when I help, but you don't put strings on it. And I help in the way that I see fit is best for a person's situation if they ask me for it. And someone immediately went how I was looking down on people and I had to just bless them and move on. It became like a hashtag in itself. You had to be there. So I explained, well, no, there's a lot of codependency and entitlement here, and that's not the way I go. I don't look down at people, I look at people. And I tell them, no, this will not fly. And that is my process. That's just the way. You don't like it, it's fine. But she kept persisting. And a couple of other sisters of color looked at this and went, something's going wrong here, and they came to my defense. I didn't ask them to, but they saw something disrespectful was happening here. And I was fairly polite. If you've ever been in a discussion with me, you know that unless things get really ugly and have crossed the threshold of civility, I maintain a very, very formal tone. So she was all about how her free speech was so important than everybody else's. And somehow people like, these other women of color who came to contest what she was saying should not speak. And that was my sign. So I wrote her a reply saying, you know what? Free speech is great, but even in your law, and all of these women who were bugging me were all white women from America, even in your law, there are laws against harassment. Just because you can say stuff does not mean you should. You will literally be prosecuted if you commit a crime with your voice. Wrote her a letter, unfriended her, started to move on, but she had to come back. And she tried, telling me how hilarious it was that I had unfriended her, and she started, but I stopped her and just said no. And I banned her. And then, not to leave it alone, she then gets a friend, misrepresents the situation, I think. The friend leaves a nasty ass comment on my wall and then bans herself to prevent, being held accountable. And I'm looking at all of this thinking, my God, are we back in the 90s? Is it high school again? Because that's exactly the kind of behavior. And mind you, I understand what's happening with the astrology, but people are showing their true colors. Too often we try to overlook the fact that some people are just assholes in the name of, but they've been traumatized. Sure. All of these people are people for whom I can find a certain level of compassion, but if they act that way, that does not mean that I need to have them in my space. Nor does it mean that I need to keep catering for them. And what I've also noticed is the people who make the most dramatic songs, swan songs about leaving in my space are the people who have never once committed like even a cent to my upkeep. They've just been taking the wealth of information that I've been giving out over the past few years. And it's a lot. Now, and it's usually something along the lines of, oh, you weren't like this, you got followers, and then you got really mean. And I'm thinking to myself, no, honey, it's not got nothing to do with the numbers. I've always been like this. I've always made it very clear what I will and will not tolerate. And I've always been civil to the people up to the point where I realize civility will not work for this person. What has really changed is that I've started giving less to these people. Because I started the Tier 23 program, realizing I needed to manage my energy and my time, and I needed to eat. So, that's where a lot of this resentment is coming from. I'm not giving it to them on demand. So then I make a post about this on Facebook because I'm like, you know what? This is happening to me. And this is definitely happening to other people of color. And in fact, it's not just about the color. It's also about anyone who is being prosecuted or targeted because they are different in some ways. Whether it's because they're transsexual or whether it's because they are a religious minority. It's about stepping up in solidarity and telling these people, this is not okay. So I make this post and immediately I'm going to say the name of this one just because her name has given a lot of mirth to a lot of people. A Karen shows up. And she starts saying shit like how I'm a whiny black woman who was mistreated and how she shows the middle finger to my voice and how I'm so full of myself. And people are just like, what on earth? I mean, quite a few of us wanted to ask her to fight a manager. I'll be honest. I resisted the temptation. I did. Others did not. And so she was just horribly rude, and someone else who claimed that she was a psychologist of some kind of a profile started going at me about how I had inner racist issues that I was projecting on. And I'm like, really? That woman stopped short of calling me a monkey. And this is what you go on? And I basically, and we called her out. And people were really helpful. They weren't mean. They were just like, you know what, people, we are white people and we have done the work and you can actually do it too. And we are willing to help you. If you email us or if you send us a private message, we are willing to give you resources to think through what it is you're saying. And one of the resources that kept coming up was a workbook called Me and White Supremacy by Laila F. Saad. That's LAYLAFSAAD, Me and White Supremacy Workbook. And people have actually, they're not doing it in a way that's putting a witch hunt or making it into a witch hunt or some kind of what do you call it? I don't know what else to call it. They're not making it a witch hunt. They're basically going, yeah, this is out of line. This is why this is out of line. And this is the resource that you can use, and you really should not be doing this in a person's space. And the worst part was, even after all of that, they still kept trying to follow me because they wanted my knowledge. So I don't know if that is the height of entitlement or not, but that is what's happening. Not just to me, I bet to any minority, any person of color who is doing something and who others are attracted to or drawn to for something that they have. So whether it's to me or whether it's to anyone else you see in that situation, you need to use your voice. You don't need to demonize or vilify those other people because they are people too. At the same time, you don't need to mollycoddle them and try to, cure their ills and treat their trauma because that's not going to happen on a Facebook thread. That is something that takes deep work. But being able to say, you know what, we are holding you accountable because you do not speak for us is a really powerful act of solidarity. And if that is the only thing you take from this video, then job done. Stay in solidarity with people who are institutionally targeted. It doesn't matter that I've been to tons of places all over the planet because of merit-based scholarships. That doesn't make me privileged. A, I worked my ass off, and B, I had racial issues targeting me everywhere I went. Whether it was the US, whether it was Germany, whether it was England, it was terrible. It's not like I am beyond that privilege. Or rather, it's not to say that I have it's not to say that I am beyond racist targeting. It is to say that I have not got that institutionalized stamp of privilege that a white person has just for existing. That's not something I resent them for. History played out the way that it did. But what I resent is when people who have that privilege fail to see how their silence in situations actually ends up reproducing it. So if you're talking about putting an end to xenophobia, putting an end to racism, putting an end to all of these divisive things that really are tearing the world apart, then if you have privilege, use it. Speak up. Use it. I have to confess that when I started out on this more public aspect of my spiritual journey, I disappointed a lot of people of color, especially women of color, and to whom I can only offer my sincere apologies because I did not know. This has been a learning curve for me as well. And at that time, yeah, they kind of came down on me pretty hard and didn't exactly tell me what was the problem. Not in a way I could understand at the very least, but I just got a lot of angry black women at me at one point, and I was like, what is going on here? But over time, I managed to look at what I wasn't doing, and I wasn't standing up for them enough because they saw me as one of them. And it's true. I'm a brown woman of color, different ethnicity, but Similar dynamics. I can pass off for African in some countries. But yeah, that has been one of the most sobering experiences and one of my regrets on this journey, that I did not know. And the reason I did not know was because I was too focused on trying to create a safe, neutral space for everybody. And at that time, of course, I was afraid of marginalizing people. Of course, I was afraid of being seen as this angry person. But right now, I've come to own it. And literally, that is why people are drawn to me these days, most of the time, most of the sane people, because they see that I'm not willing to create a safe space at the expense of the underprivileged. It doesn't matter if it's a successful black person or yellow person, that person has had to go through mountains of shit. Support them. That doesn't mean that you can get to throw dump and heap stuff on poor white people, because there are poor white people who feel very, very oppressed. It means to say that pointing out that they do not have a particular cross or burden to carry, unlike people of a different race, is not a bad thing. And white people get very defensive when you say that, because it's all about how they're scapegoated, victimized, marginalized. You know what, honey? Colonialism. If anyone needs to look at projection issues and not wanting to deal with their histories, sorry, but colonialism. I recently saw a map that actually showed how the direct influence of colonization is still, tied to geographic distributions of wealth at a global scale. You're looking at something like two-thirds of, the income of the planet concentrated in something like 14% of the population in those very, very countries that make up the West or the first world, or what was more easily defined in that way. Those historical legacies have not left us. And a lot of white people who especially are in the spiritual field and who do the yoga and who go on the retreats and who say namaste, I know you think you're trying, and some of you really are, but some of you are really making it a lot worse. So before you think that mixing and matching another person's culture is the way you're going to redeem yourself, please ask what a person of that culture feels about it first. It's not going to hurt anyone if you just ask. And there are lots of different ways that we can have this conversation. And I don't want to detract into those side conversations, but what I really want to say here is this. You want to change the world? You want to put an end to division? Don't shut up. Use your voice and hold people accountable. Because you're not going to change the mind of a bigot or a troll. But very often people abuse others thinking that they can get away with it and that no one will witness what they did. Especially in Facebook land or social media. And then they try to delete themselves or whatever, to hide their trail. But make sure that people know that there is someone watching, that there is a witness, there is someone who can hold you accountable. I'm not saying you need to rescue black people or yellow people or whatever, or indigenous people. No, they can fight their own battles. But having someone else there to say, hey, this is wrong, can actually really help to heal a deep, deep, deep rift. Of course, white people need healing, but please don't do it at the expense of people who are already working through generations and generations of shit that are still influencing billions today. It's not at all on the same scale. And of course, there are exceptions. The Irish have their own narrative of persecution. The indigenous people of Scandinavia have their own narrative. And I'm not using white people to tar everybody who is of a lighter skin tone than me. Is that whitewash? You know what I'm saying? It is about really just thinking about things like this before you open your mouth. It is about being present for people who really would appreciate someone else saying, no, you don't need to fight your battle alone. I'm here right by your side. You want to change the world? Start with that. Take care. Very many blessings. Lots of love. Ciao, ciao for now.